Um, she she is the associate professor and interim department director in the Department of Family and Consumer Sciences at Morgan State University in Baltimore, Maryland, and the newest of our chapters and chapter advisor, Gamma Omicron Chapter. So we're so excited to have you with us today. And so she's going to share a little bit about the book that she has co-authored, and it is titled African Americans in the Human Sciences, Challenges and Opportunities. So Dr. Holland, just throughout her career in education, she served as a family and consumer sciences teacher, a school administrator, district supervisor for family and consumer sciences, and I'm sure has worn many other hats. She's also served as the president of the National Coalition for Black Development in Family and Consumer Sciences, and was the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences 2017 to 2018 president. In 2020, she received the AAFCS Distinguished Service Award, and she serves on the board of trustees for the International Home Economics Services and has presented nationally and internationally. So we're so excited to have her with us today and look forward to hearing more about her new book. So let's give a warm round of applause to Dr. Holland.
Thank you, Melissa. And it's really good to be here with you all this evening to share about this book. So I'm going to share my screen with you. So I have a PowerPoint that I would like to share. Let's see, slideshow. And I do bring you greetings from Morgan State University. We just inducted 12 new students about 2 weeks ago. When we did it virtually, we had about 40 in attendance. So it was really great. We really had a great time. So the students are really excited about this next year and, you know, what we're going to do, you know, as a chapter. So thank you again just for having me come this evening and to share about this book. And the title is African Americans in the Human Sciences, Challenges and Opportunities. And actually, this is a second book that is being sponsored by the National Coalition for Black Development in Family and Consumer Sciences. And so this organization was founded about 40 years ago. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary because they saw that there was a void in celebrating and affirming African American professionals and pre-professionals. And so they developed this organization to support, to triumph, and, you know, just to get behind African American and other people of color and African descent in the profession. And many of you may not know that, you know, when the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences was founded, or AHEA, American Home Economics Association, when the founder, Ellen Richards, and a lot of her colleagues came together in Lake Placid, there's no evidence that there were people of color there, even though if we do some historical research, we know that people of color, Asian, African American, Latina, Native Americans, we were all, you know, involved in the human sciences in our communities. So one of the reasons why this organization was founded was for that very reason, to make sure that, you know, people of color are acknowledged. And so they wrote or created a book in 2009, African American Women, Contributions to the Human Sciences. And this book it's filled with a lot of wonderful information. It goes back to the historical aspect of African Americans once they were freed from slavery, and all the things that were around, or how they actually began to be a part of education, how they educated children, and other things that they did. It talks about some of the HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, which I'll talk a bit about tonight. And then it also gives, it's like a biographical sketch of several African American women and the contribution that they have made, not only here in the US, but internationally. So it's a really good book to have if you're thinking about, diversity at your university or, wherever you practice, and, to allow students to know about all the other people who have contributed to the human sciences. So this book is the second one, African Americans in the Human Sciences, Challenges and Opportunities. And my colleagues who wrote with me are Vanessa Jackson and Julia Miller Arline. And so it took us about 5 years to complete this book, but we finally got it done, and we're real excited about that. Of course, that was in the midst of COVID, and which delayed it a little bit, but we're excited that it's now finally published. And so the book is really a compilation. There are 28 authors, contributors, and they're all sharing about different aspects of the human sciences. So it's part of like their reflections, transformations, thinking about the future, things that we should think about as human sciences professionals as we move forward in our profession. So it's relevant not only to the professionals, but also to the pre-professionals. So our college students would benefit from this as well. And so the book has 5 parts. And so what I thought I would do is, talk a little bit about each part. And I have quotes from some of the authors, and just to give you a brief synopsis of what everything is about, to give you an idea about it. And so the first part talks about women, education, and careers. And, I think this is quite poignant that, from the very beginning, African-American women in the human sciences have really worked hard to improve the quality of life and education within the African-American community. And the first book that I mentioned to you is an example of that. And, there are other people that are not in the book that if you did a little bit of research or dug deep, you would find that there are a number of women and men that have really made a difference in their community. And this particular quote is from the first chapter of the book, which talks about educating women and girls. I love it. The education of women and girls provides poverty, reducing synergies and gains that are intergenerational. And, there's a Ghanaian quote that says, if you educate a man, you educate one person. But if you educate the woman, you're going to educate the family and the community. So even the education of women just really goes much further than we think. And yet, around the world, women and girls are prevented, from going to school. So her chapter really talks a lot about that one. And then this one too, this is also by Dr. Miller Arline and Dr. Jackson, that as African-American women continue to be strong and powerful contributors in the human sciences, they often face many challenges that differ from other women leaders. And some of those challenges are related to being invisible, like even though the African-American woman is there, she's making a contribution, she's working hard, many times she could be overlooked. I mean, that happens for women as well, all women. And, for sure for African-American women. And, there are a lot of issues like racism and that have a part in that. But it seems like for women to overcome, the whole idea of mentoring is very important for the African-American woman, as well as spirituality, really getting in touch, with her spiritual roots. And, this chapter also looks at some women leaders and what they do to really overcome and to be strong leaders in their profession. This is a very interesting chapter here. It's a study that was done by Dr. Bennett, and it talks about Black mothers that face unique challenges and responsibilities in raising their children. And it's actually part of a study that she did, and she looked at 6 African-American women who are all in education. Some of them are college professors, some were more on secondary level, but it just talked about the challenges that they have as mothers in raising their children. So it's quite interesting, the research and what comes out of that, and it's actually comments that these women give about some of the challenges that they have as mothers raising their children. This one is quite interesting because we know with the millennial generation, they bring a different skill set and a different set of strengths and abilities that some of the older generations do not have. And so Ethel Jones in this chapter about millennials talks about them as being our up and coming professionals. And some of them are already there, right now. Actually, we should be thinking about Generation Z and what they're bringing. But this chapter really talks about their work ethic, their self-motivation, also that the millennials are involved in social justice. They love working in a team. And they're very diverse, this millennial generation. So it's quite interesting for those of us who work with millennials or teach millennials. It's a lot of good information that could really help us as we work with them. This chapter is quite interesting as well. This quote that many of the challenges, struggles, and obstacles encountered by African Americans and people of color are invisible. And though they're in the workplace, they're in the university, they're in the community, and they do have needs and struggles, but oftentimes it's not seen, it's not acknowledged, by others. And in this chapter, these two authors, they did a study on women, African American women in higher education, and some of the struggles that they went through, and yet how they overcame those struggles to be productive in their place of work. I think in every community or culture, there's always health is a big thing, like no matter if it pertains to what we eat, exercise, mental health, physical health, is quite prevalent. And so in this chapter, the author, Dr. Williams, talks about, African American women and their health, and how that it really impacts them as individuals and as mothers and as partners. And she really talks about there's a need for other African Americans to take up the standard and learn more about their culture and the people, and to be able to address the needs that African American women have. Because many times going to someone who is outside of the culture or the ethnicity, there may be misunderstanding or not, quite knowing what's going on with that person's health. And so in this chapter, there's a lot of data and information about the health of African American women and how it can be improved. So that's all in part one. In part two, it's this section talks about historical Black colleges and universities and the opportunities and challenges that are there. And this is an interesting quote here. Once a beacon of hope for thousands of Black students denied access to higher education by predominantly white institutions, HBCUs have educated generations of Black professionals. And it's generations on every level, whether you think about the arts, engineering, math and science, business, family and consumer sciences, the human sciences, social work. So they've done, a really good job in educating students in that way. And there's still many HBCUs that exist today. One chapter in this section talks about Virginia State University, and Virginia State University has been around since 1882. And they've really done a lot of work just in transformation, like the Department of Family and Consumer Sciences, which was home economics when it started. And it talks about the leaders that were in the department and just the impact that they've had, over 100 years or on so many students. This particular chapter by Shipley and others talks about HBCUs and how that they hold a lot of promise for students in regards to impact and innovation. And for those of you who may not know, after the Civil War, there was a congressman actually by the name of Morrill, and he created an act called and it's known as the Morrill Act, and it was actually signed by President Lincoln at the time. And the whole purpose of it was to establish funding for land grant institutions. So in every state, there would be a land grant higher education institution that, people could go to learn, because, oftentimes you have that, they have the means and monies to go to whatever higher education facility they would like to, but for the common person, they didn't. And so money was established, and for many of the states, especially those in the southern part of the country, were given money to establish these institutions. But because of discrimination, African Americans were not allowed to attend the institutions. And so therefore, in 1890, they created another set of funds that would just be for African American institutions. And so that's how the HBCUs came into existence. Some of the institutions are 1890. They're referred to as 1890 because that's when the funding came. Other institutions, like the one that I currently work at, Morgan State University, was actually founded by a church in the city of Baltimore. And so though we are an HBCU, we don't get the funding that the 1890 institutions did. And so in this chapter, it gives it covers all of the different 1890 HBCUs and talks about where they're located. And many of them do have family and consumer sciences programs, or the human sciences programs there. For those of us who have gone through the accreditation process by the American Association of Family and Consumer Sciences, we know that is a great benchmark, of quality. And it actually says to anyone who's interested in coming to your institution that there's a quality, that your institution has, that it's met many standards. The standards are high. And so if a student comes through or graduates, matriculates from the university, they can be proud of that because it's accredited. So not only the department is accredited, but of course, many of our institutions are accredited as well. And so for HBCUs, that is a benchmark of quality, and as I mentioned before, what HBCUs have done over the years for people of color to be accredited, it's just like the icing on the cake. So these two individuals, Dr. Dixon and Dr. Smith, and in their chapter, they talk a lot about that, about the accreditation and how it's viewed, and they actually give the institutions that have been accredited. Part 3 of the book goes into internationalization. So we know that the human sciences doesn't just exist here in the US, but it's actually, global. And then also human sciences in other countries have contributed significantly to strengthening programs aimed at women, families, and children. And next year, Many of you may be aware that the International Federation of Home Economics will have their Congress here in the US. It's going to be in Georgia and Atlanta. So many of you may be aware of that, and information will be coming out later to help you if you choose to go to that. But it's a great opportunity to meet colleagues from across the world and just seeing what they're doing in the human sciences. So this is a chapter that I wrote with Dr. Pearson and Dr. Mendenhall, and it talks about the contribution that family consumer sciences professionals here in the US have made globally. We talk about the Peace Corps. There were a number of individuals that were involved in the Peace Corps, and they went to several countries and different continents and worked in that way. We talked about the International Federation of Home Economics, and there's a US portion in our region, and what we have done over the years to support the work internationally. There's also some information in that chapter about people from different colleges, HBCUs and other institutions who have really made a difference and traveled abroad using their profession, you know, to really help others in other countries. This is, you know, again, we go back to the topic of women, and, you know, just many of you, if you've done some research or done some reading, you know how women are looked down upon in many countries, even our own to some extent. They're not elevated or given all that they need. There's always this competition that, you know, we should make as much as men do. So it's just continues. So it's not just here in our country, but also abroad as well. And so, you know, Dr. Miller-Arline just talks about some of those disparities and, you know, the disempowerment of women. And then what can we do as human sciences? What should we take up? You know, how can we address some of these issues, and how can we work at preventing, you know, like reproductive rights that are taken away from women, also the negative stereotyping, female children, you know, how they're not honored and celebrated as much as male children. So it's a lot of information for us to think about, you know, as we work with our students, and what can we do to make them more aware of these issues. This particular chapter by Dr. Smith and Dr. Yang, it talks about a study abroad experience, which I know that for my university, it's a big part of our university, it's a significant part. Due to COVID, we have been able to travel abroad. Hopefully next year, you know, we're looking forward to doing that. But this chapter talks about some teachers, family consumer sciences teachers, pre-professionals, they're learning to be, or preparing to be educators. They traveled to Ghana, and it talks about their experience there and what it was like to be in Ghana and to engage with the community and students there. Part 4 is about career paths and foundations. And we know that human sciences coursework supports and facilitates career exploration and professional development for all students. And we're all about the careers and what they're able to do, you know, as a result of being exposed to the human sciences. Communities' investment in children in their early years help them to be resilient while navigating through frustration and difficult times. And this is a really good chapter that talks about what the community can do to really help children. It's based on young children and some of their experience of growing up. And the author here is using the framework of Bronfenbrenner, which talks about the ecology of human development. So they go into detail about how do we invest in children's lives, young children, and how do we help them navigate, through the world and through what may happen in the future, as we teach them at a young age. This is quite an interesting chapter by Dr. Ralston, and she talks about her journey in her profession. She starts out as a home economics teacher, and then she works through all of the different things that she has done, the different career paths that she has taken. She's currently working with elders in Florida, but her chapter is a reflection, as she has moved through her career, how things have changed in a sense regarding as she has aged. So transformation in light of where she is now, it's a little bit different from when she first started out teaching as a young professional, and how she grapples with that and how she adjusts. So it's quite an interesting chapter that she has done there. And then this one right here, effective strategies implemented by FCS contributed to students' self-efficacy and increased their knowledge of related career pathways. It's part of my dissertation when I was doing my research on self-efficacy and career development, and I wanted to look at what impact did family and consumer sciences teachers have on student self-efficacy. And what I found was that they do have an impact on it. And, even though students pretty much choose their careers based on their relationship with family and neighbors, but being involved in the family consumer sciences classroom really helps them know about who they are and to have a positive self-esteem regarding that. The fifth part and the last part of the book talks about technology and, that it is a wave of the present and future. And even as we're here today, we're using Zoom, it's going to be on a YouTube channel. And, just as we use technology, it's important and a very big part of our life. And, through the use of technology, we prepare students. We also prepare ourselves to balance work and family life. And to manage living and working in a technological society, because it's a part of who we are. And, it's going to be interesting to see what continues to happen in the future regarding technology. And this particular chapter here, it talks about using technology and media, and it's done with young children, and how that is so important in teaching the children how to use it properly, and to maximize all the things that are involved in the applications with technology and to use it in a positive way. And then this last chapter here by Dr. Smith and Dr. Caples talks about a school district in Maryland and how they use technology to help close the achievement gap in their students, and just how they see that technology is so important, of course, in the world, and it's a way to expand opportunity for everyone. As I mentioned earlier, the contributors of the book, there are 28, and I just listed them here, and those with an asterisk are no longer with us. So we do miss them, but we really appreciate the work that they have done and their contribution to the book. So at this point, I'll stop and see if anyone has any questions or comments.
I'll ask a question, Dr. Holland.
Okay.
So what really inspired you and the other authors to, put forth the effort to make a second book, so to speak, through the Coalition for Black Development?
Mm-hmm. Well, part of it is that we wanted to generate funds for the students who are part of the coalition. But then the other part, we felt like it had been such a long time since the first book, it was 2009, and that we were ready to do something different. And we kind of looked at some different topics that we could address. And in light of those topics, we found people who were able to write toward them. So, you know, that was the reason why we decided to write it.
That's great. Thank you.
I was curious, did you have anybody from across any of the big ponds to help out? Were any of those authors you listed not within the United States?
No, they're all within the US.
Did you seek any from outside when you were trying to gather your consortium of people?
Yeah, good question. I don't think we did. I think we knew of people and the work that they had done.
Mhm.
And, you know, we did like approach them kind of like an open call, you know, like we sent it out to a number of individuals, would be in institutions, and, you know, let them know that we were creating this book and would love to have them contribute if they would like to.
Mm-hmm. I just know we're having a big influx of interest from international students into our program. So I know that there's a huge interest out there for home economics all over the globe, of course, you know, IFAT. But I was just curious if you had that outside influence to help with putting it together.
We actually had some of our colleagues from the Caribbean be readers, like, you know, to read the information, to give us feedback in that regard. But perhaps for our third book.
There you go. Right, you can kind of tie that international aspect of it to include the international authors. That was my next question. I said, where do you see the next book coming, and where there will be enough information to compile a new set of, chapters? Do you see that as something that you'll do in 10 years, 5 years? That's
a really good question. You know, we've never really talked about it or discussed it. But I think we would do something again, but yeah, a good question. I'll go back and ask them, like, what do you guys think about another book?
Well, and I say that because, our president's theme for these 2 years is inspiring others through FCS storytelling. And essentially that's what this book is about, is telling the stories, of people of color and women, especially in our field. And I just think the more we can keep that rolling, whether it's new publications and new research, I just think it's a great thing to keep moving about. As a matter of fact, I just jotted down a note, and this is going to sound totally selfish, but my title is Men in FCS, because the only stories you hear about men in FCS are all negative in the past. For the most part. They like came in and they tried to take over and kind of turn things upside down. And I'm like, there has to be some good stories out there of men in FCS that have contributed, that, besides Dewey and hosting the original get-togethers. But so I'm just thinking, I wonder if that's something that could happen. And what would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, I would. It's so interesting you say that, because I think as a result of, being a part as president of AAFCS, when I became president, I really thought hard about what would my platform be. And I'm getting off a little bit, but to answer your question, it's always a platform. And my platform was on diversity and inclusion, because as a member of the organization, oftentimes when I sat in the audience or attended activities or things like that, professional development, I didn't see people who looked like me, in the leadership position. And so I felt like that's something I really wanted to explore as president. So I developed a group of, most of them were former presidents of the association, and, a task force, and they met for almost, I guess, about 5 months. I had some other outside people, and as a result, they identified that that's something that the association really needed to address, like for the next 5 years. That was in 2018. that they needed to think about it on every level. And so, as a result, now we have a community of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we've done some surveys to see, what's going on. Where do the members sit? What do they need? What are their views about that? And so one of the courses that I teach is an introduction to family consumer sciences. And the book that I used had little or nothing about African Americans or people of color, whether it be Asian, Latina, Native, African American. And so I chose to take, one week and just talk about that based on what I've done, the work I've done in my reading and using some of the books that I shared with you. And then this semester, I am doing a podcast on people of color in the human sciences, because I feel like it's not there. And one of the individuals that my students interviewed is an African-American man who's a professor at a university, and he's in fashion design. And so I see this as an ongoing project that we will continue to add to this podcast and add the voices as my students research, and then I would interview them and they would tell the story about the person, who they interviewed and who they researched. So I definitely see that as a possibility, and I think would be a great topic. And, even as you were asking me the question, I thought about why couldn't we have a book of collegiates and writing their stories. About
Absolutely. I think there's a lot. I might need that. Yeah. I might need that guy's name.
Okay. I have to put you on my list too.
Okay.
Yeah.
But no, I think there could be a whole series of books talking about the stories of people in FCS from their different perspectives, and culture, race, and education level and everything, because think of the challenges our teachers face in the classroom right now, or that our nutritionists face with, diabetes being so prevalent in so many populations, and just the different stories of how they deal with that. I think there's just a wealth of information out there. I don't want to hog the conversation. Who else has a question?
Hi, this is Karen in Wisconsin. And hi, just last night I was with a group of about 40 Phi U students and a few alums. And among the alums, one of them was so deeply concerned about the effect of technology, the negative effect of technology on the learning that's going on in our classes. And the fact that it's imposed on students. They don't have any say about how they learn. It's just there. And I think she felt a lot is being lost in the process of imposing this super technology on students. And the whole idea that last year with the pandemic, students did lose. I think that's fairly well documented. They've lost ground. But at the college level, her concern was that I don't know, it's just this whole technology thing, and it's being praised more than being assessed, I think was her concern.
And I think like last year, well, even now, with COVID, it really exposed the haves and the have-nots, because the haves had technology and they did well, but it was, the people in our country who did not have, who did not have the means or, to get the technology, who were taking their children to a parking lot at McDonald's so they could get Wi-Fi. That's, I think, is what we need to address, because I think if everyone has it, or if they had it, it would have worked much better. Well, that's one of the things, but there are other things as well with technology that maybe parents weren't aware or didn't know how to use it. And it was a challenge to teach, I know, for me, and trying to be creative. And when I asked my students, just recently I had a conversation And I was saying, if we were in class, this is where we would have been. That was interior design. And she goes, but you did a great job. You had us engaged. We were talking. And I was like, okay. So it worked, but it didn't, I would have loved to have been face to face, you know, for that experience. But yeah, your point is well taken, Karen.
And I have to commend Dr. Holland, because if you don't know, Dr. Holland's chapter Gamma Omicron is the first chapter that we have ever installed as a brand new chapter of Phi U, completely virtual. So we're all getting quite good at this as time goes on, but it definitely was a first for us. And so she did an amazing job, and it was fun. It really was fun. And you know, pros and cons to anything. One thing I loved about that initiation ceremony was seeing the family members of the new initiates, you know, when they were announcing their names or sharing, and then their grandmother was congratulating them, and maybe even calling them an endearing name for all of us to hear. But I just loved it, because it's those little moments that I think prompt this sense of community. And I think that's what a lot of us are missing, right? And I think that's what draws us to FCS also, is just having that sense of, you know, community there.
Well, and did the technology help with the authoring of the book? Did you notice an increase over COVID of more Zoom interactions, or more emails, or more conference calls in order to edit through this process? Because you said it took about 5 years, right? Mm-hmm. So the last 2 years was with, you know, increased technology use. Did you notice how did that affect the editing and authorship?
The last 2 years, it was pretty much done. We were just trying to get a publisher. So COVID kind of put us on hold because we didn't hear from anybody for a while. And then we got it together. But yeah, myself and the other, you know, co-authors, we would definitely Zoom and connect and everything regarding that. So
I do think it has its pluses and minuses.
Yes.
You know, I mean, because we couldn't have done that national initiation ceremony without Zoom. And that was a great thing to be a part of. But then again, you know, I think every one of us want to be face to face with our students in that regard, and develop those tighter, you know, relationships with them versus, you know, just a face on a screen. So. But it is a point well taken, like she said, Karen. I think you can also have burnout from it. Matter of fact, people are doing studies on that right now, Zoom burnout and all that FaceTime that they have on a screen. So do we have any other questions for Dr. Holland about her book? If not, I want Dr. Holland to show us information about how we can order a copy or where we can get that copy.
So you can get a discount if you order before December 31st, 30% off the book. And I think it would be great, even if not a personal copy, then maybe for your university, for your department, or for the library. And again, all the proceeds will go to help to support pre-professionals, you know, in their scholarship and funding to attend conferences and things such as that. So any of the proceeds does not even go to me or my co-authors. It's going to the organization to assist students.
Now, Dr. Holland, would it be okay if we shared that discount code?
Oh, yes.
Could Phi U share that? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. Melissa, I can send you the flyer if you'd like.
That would be perfect.
That would be great. And then we can send it out to everybody.
Okay.
That's exciting.
I think it would be a great book review in a class to go over. So especially the history and philosophy of FCS.
I'll stop sharing this.
Okay. Yeah, and I get it all written down, so. Okay. Well, Dr. Holland, we want to thank you so much. We've got about 5 more minutes if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, we can wrap it up a little early. I'm going to turn it back over to Melissa to see if she has any updates on Phi U National or anything about our new launch of our platform. If she wants to just give us a little brief there, that'd be wonderful.
Yes, thank you, Kyle. And thank you so much, Dr. Holland, for joining us tonight and taking the time to share your book with us. We're so excited and love that you share that discount code for us to order it as well. So I don't have anything, pressing or new to offer. Most of what I have to share is stuff we already know in terms of our Greek track transition. If it takes me a little longer to respond to your queries, just let me, give me a few days and I promise I will get to you. We do have new jewelry, so you can get yourself a book, you can get yourself some jewelry and be on your way for the holiday season. But if you go to phiu.org in the top right, you'll see a jewelry link now.
And the quality is good because I ordered the lapel pin already. And it showed up and I really like it. So
great. Yes, we made sure we had something for those men FCS leaders who wanted something. So
thank you.
Kyle even got to weigh in on that selection. We did a survey, so we're really excited about that. But just stay tuned. Follow us on social media. We're always, posting and sharing different things, and just like these chapter chats. Having Dr. Holland join us is such a treat. And so this is our 7th chat, actually. So we'll be doing more, and the chats we've already had are archived on our YouTube channel, so you can find us there. So again, that's that technology, but I know that a lot of us miss. I'm a hugger, all right? I miss hugging people and being together, but one day.
Sure. Well, thank you, Melissa. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Dr. Holland, do you have any last words of wisdom as we sign off?
Just to say happy holidays to everyone, and please be safe, get some rest, limit your computer time.